Move your wrinkled ass, old man. This ain't karaoke night. Rick barked across the bar. His eyes glinted with the kind of malice that comes from feeling untouchable. In the center of the room, Jae-Sung Kwon looked like easy prey, quiet, alone. The kind of man a gang pushes to feel powerful. The group circled him, mistaking stillness for weakness, laughing as they shoved him, spilling drinks over his shoulders. To them, he was nothing, just another foreigner, a target for humiliation. They didn't see the years etched under his calm. They didn't notice the posture, the breathing, the precision that came from decades as a top strategist in the K-Mafia. When Rick's mockery turned violent and beer splashed down his collar, the joke became a challenge, a spark that would ignite a chain of events. Nobody in that bar could predict secrets that had lain hidden for years, ready to explode. Before we dive deeper, comment where in the world you are watching from. And make sure to subscribe, because the next part of this story will shock you like nothing else. Because tonight, they picked the wrong man to humiliate. Jae-Sung Kwon sat at the far end of the bar, his hands wrapped around a glass of soju as if it were armor. At 47, he carried the weight of a dozen lifetimes in his eyes. Quiet, composed, every movement deliberate. 12 years ago, betrayal had ripped through the Jeju-Pa syndicate, leaving him with nothing but shadows and memories too sharp to forget. He vanished, erased his name, and stepped out of the world that had once feared him. Tonight, no one in this sleepy town suspected the man quietly sipping at the bar had once been one of the most feared enforcers in all of Jeju. And yet, he had come here for one reason. A reason that had nothing to do with starting over. Across the room, the Red Valley boys laughed too loudly, the sound bouncing off the wooden walls. They were local troublemakers, the kind of men who thrived on intimidation and petty power, running protection rackets that kept the bar's patrons nervously watching from a distance. Their leader, Rick, brash, impulsive, and convinced of his own invincibility, prowled around like a lion marking territory. He saw Jae-Sung's silence, his stillness, and assumed weakness. Every smirk, every shove, every mocking comment was an assertion of dominance. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The bar itself seemed to hold its breath, a neutral ground where townspeople turned blind eyes to whispered deals and quiet threats. The smell of grilled fish and spilled beer hung in the air, mingling with laughter that carried more menace than joy. And now, the stage was set, a clash between past and present, between a man hiding from a life he could never forget, and a gang that believed courage was loud words and raised fists. For Jae-Sung, the stakes were clear. 12 years of hiding, of silence, of careful calculation could unravel in a single moment. One wrong move, one spark, and everything he had built, his new life, his carefully buried past. The secrets that could topple men far more dangerous than Rick and his boys could all come crashing down. And as the gang edged closer, circling him with all the confidence of ignorance, the air itself seemed to thicken. Because in that quiet bar, under the warm glow of flickering neon, the wrong move would not just humiliate. It would awaken a storm that had been waiting 12 long years to strike. Before we dive deeper, comment where in the world you're watching from. And if you're new here, click subscribe so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The moment Rick's hand strikes the glass, and it shatters across the counter, sending whiskey sliding toward the edge, the entire bar erupts into laughter. But not him. Jae-Sung doesn't flinch, doesn't glare, doesn't breathe differently. He simply watches, not the spill, but the reflection of every man in this room, mapped out across the small pool of amber light. They think he's ignoring them, but inside, Jae-Sung is doing what he has spent a lifetime perfecting, calculating exits, measuring distances, assigning danger levels, identifying objects that can be used as weapons, just like he did 20 years ago, on nights far deadlier than this one. The first shove is playful. The second is not. By the third, the bar isn't laughing anymore. They're waiting to see if this quiet man will finally snap. Rick leans in close, the smell of cheap beer clinging to every syllable. Slurs follow. Another shove. A hand reaches for Jae-Sung's bag, the one thing he's kept closer than his own shadow. Curiosity rises in the room like heat. What's in the bag? Money? Stolen goods? A gun? But no. What rests inside that zipper is something none of these boys are prepared to face. She pretends to dry a glass, but her eyes never leave him. The bartender has watched fear. She's watched anger. She's watched drunks turn into monsters. But this is something else entirely. This is a man, holding back a storm so violent it threatens to break through his skin. A storm he fears more than anyone else in this room. And in the space between one breath and the next, his mind fractures back in time. To the betrayal, the night the Jeju-pa painted the docks red. To the bloodshed, friends turned enemies, enemies turned ghosts. To the night he disappeared, his name erased, his existence buried, his hands still shaking from what he left behind. And then, to the promise he made kneeling beside someone he couldn't save. A promise that dragged him across oceans and anchored him to this forgotten little town. Rick, drunk on attention, pushes the final boundary, slaps the hat off Jae-Sung's head. It hits the floor with a soft sound, but the silence that follows is loud enough to swallow the whole room. Everyone feels it. The shift in the air, a sudden heaviness, as if every molecule recognizes the predator that the human eyes have failed to see. But they don't understand what they've awakened. Not yet. The final shove sends Jae-Sung's bag tumbling off the stool. It hits the wooden floor with a soft thud, and the zipper splits just enough to reveal something metallic inside. Rick sees it. The boys see it. And for the first time, even they hesitate. But what terrifies Jae-Sung isn't their curiosity. It's what the object represents. Because what rests inside that bag is not a weapon, not something meant to harm them. It is a reminder, a promise he has failed to keep. A confession he has carried for 12 long years, one that has followed him through every new name, every sleepless night, every lie he's tried to live as truth. And tonight, that confession threatens to be exposed. And then, the moment Jae-Sung has been avoiding for 12 long years finally arrives. Rick's hand closes around the strap of the bag and lifts it from the floor, as if it were nothing more than an old backpack, belonging to some quiet nobody. But Jae-Sung is no nobody. Not tonight. Not ever. Jae-Sung rises from his seat, smoothly, silently, like a shadow deciding to become human again. He doesn't bark a warning, doesn't threaten, doesn't posture. He simply stands. And in that simple act, every muscle in the room tightens. Conversation dies. Air thins. The universe itself seems to lean forward, as if to witness what happens next. Because this exact situation, this exact choice, this exact confrontation was the one thing he ran from when he buried his past and erased his name. 12 years of hiding, 12 years of silence, 12 years of living with a promise he was never able to keep, all undone by one foolish boy, holding the one thing Jae-Sung cannot lose. Rick opens the bag, and inside, resting in the dim glow of the bar light, is a necklace, a small, delicate pendant, too elegant to belong in a place like this, too precious to sit inside the hands of a man like Rick. It belonged to her, the daughter of the mafia boss Jae-Sung once betrayed, the girl he swore he would protect, even if it cost him his life, the girl he failed. On the night everything burned, and that necklace, that tiny remnant of innocence in a world full of blood, is the only piece of her he has left. The only proof she ever existed. The only proof he isn't the monster the syndicate painted him to be. The bar freezes, because from the far corner, a chair scrapes, a breath catches, a pair of trembling eyes widens. Someone here knows that necklace. Someone knows exactly who it belonged to. Someone who understands what it means, and what it makes him. And in that instant, Jae-Sung isn't hiding anymore. His past has found him, inside a small-town bar, filled with the wrong people, at the worst possible moment. If you're still watching, comment, "I'm still here" in the chat. Let's see who's locked in. Let's see the real ones. In the corner of the bar, where the shadows cling to the walls, and forgotten men drink in silence. A figure slowly rises. No one pays attention at first. No one except Jae-Sung, because he feels it, that unmistakable ripple in the air. When someone dangerous decides to step forward, the man's eyes fix on the necklace, dangling from Rick's hand. A tremor moves through him. Not fear, memory. He knows the delicate gold chain. He knows the faint engraving on the pendant. He knows who it belonged to, and exactly what it means. That Jae-Sung carries it. But more than that, he knows Jae-Sung, not the quiet man the town believes he is, not the polite stranger who keeps to himself. He knows the enforcer, the butcher of Jeju's underworld, the ghost they never managed to kill. And the reason this quiet man in the corner stands is because he's been hunting Jae-Sung Kwon for years, tracking whispers, tracing rumors, following the blood-stained breadcrumbs left behind by a man who tried to vanish. He didn't expect to find him here. Not like this. Not surrounded by fools who think they're lions, when they're really just sheep, circling a sleeping wolf. The bar is no longer one story. It is three. First, the Red Valley boys, convinced they're intimidating a harmless immigrant, who's too scared to fight back. Second, Jae-Sung, desperately holding himself together, trying not to reveal who he truly is, because everything he's built depends on staying invisible. And third, the hunter, driven by revenge, watching years of grief and fury sharpen into purpose, as he takes his first step toward the man he believes destroyed his life. Three storms, all moving toward the center of the room, toward Jae-Sung. Then comes the twist no one sees, not even Rick, because Rick isn't just a bully, or a loudmouth drunk, or the leader of some backwoods gang. He has ties to the same syndicate Jae-Sung once served, the same syndicate that collapsed the night Jae-Sung disappeared. Rick thinks he's tormenting a stranger, but if he knew the truth, if he knew that the man standing in front of him helped build the empire he worships, he wouldn't just back down, he would kneel. And suddenly, every patron in the bar, from the bartender polishing a glass with trembling hands, to the couple frozen mid-conversation, to the old man pretending not to watch, feels it. Something ancient is waking inside Jae-Sung. Not anger, not fear, something far more dangerous, something carved into him by decades of discipline, training, and survival. The stillness before a strike, the calm before a storm, the moment when a man stops running and remembers who he is. Rick's fist comes at Jae-Sung in a wide, sloppy arc, the kind thrown by a man too sure of himself, too drunk on ego, too ignorant of the danger standing inches away. But the punch never lands, not even close. Fast, precise, controlled, not the fury of a cornered man, but the discipline of someone who has spent a lifetime learning exactly how to end a conflict before it truly begins. His body shifts, a step, a turn, a deflection, and in less than a breath, Rick's balance shatters. He crumples, not theatrically, not with drama, but the way a tree falls when the last cut finally slices through the trunk. The bar gasps. The gang stumbles backward, and suddenly, their confidence drains out of them like cheap whiskey spilled on the floor. Then, from behind the cluster of terrified gang members, the hunter emerges, a gun in his hand, a tremor in his fingers, 12 years of hatred boiling behind his eyes. This is not justice for him. It never was. He isn't here to arrest Jae-Sung, or confront him, or demand answers. He is here to erase shame, to remove the ghost who haunted his every waking moment, to finally prove to himself, to the world, that he is strong enough to finish what he started. And then, for the first time that night, Jae-Sung speaks. His voice is quiet, steady, not pleading, but carrying the weight of a truth he never wanted to revisit. "I didn't kill her," he says. "I tried to save her." The words freeze the room. Rick's gang, the bartender, the hunter, the bar itself seems to stop breathing, because no one was expecting him to defend himself. Not the hunter seeking vengeance, not the gang seeking dominance, not the ghosts inside his own memory. The boss's daughter, the young woman whose necklace rests in that bag, was not murdered by Jae-Sung. She tried to escape the syndicate. She begged Jae-Sung for help, the only man she believed still had honor, in a world drowning in blood and betrayal. And he did help her. He risked everything to smuggle her out, to break the chains she was born into. But he failed. The syndicate found them. The night ended in screams, gunfire, and a riverbank stained with the memory of a girl who just wanted a different life. And Jae-Sung survived, not because he ran, but because she used her last breath to tell him to. The hunter's hand trembles harder now, not from rage, but from discovering a truth he spent a decade avoiding. He lowers the gun, not because forgiveness rises in his chest. It doesn't. Not because the pain has faded. It hasn't. He lowers it because he understands something deeper. The truth must come out. And he cannot kill the only witness left. Who knows what really happened? The night the syndicate lost its princess, killing Jae-Sung now would bury answers that the dead deserve to have spoken. And so, for the first time in years, he hesitates. Red and blue lights cut through the darkness, washing across the broken bar windows, the shattered pride, and the men who moments ago believed they owned this town. Officers rush inside, stepping over fallen chairs and spilled beer, gathering the Red Valley boys one by one. Their bravado has drained out of them completely. Rick lies unconscious, still sprawled where he fell, the weight of his own arrogance finally meeting the immovable force of reality. His hands twitch slightly, but his eyes remain closed. And in the middle of it all, Jae-Sung Kwon does something no one expects. He doesn't run. He doesn't resist. He simply stands there, still as stone, arms lowered at his sides, breathing slow, as if finally surrendering to a truth he's been postponing for over a decade. For the first time in 12 long years, he is tired of hiding. Outside, the night air is cold, brushing against his sweat-soaked shirt. He sits on the curb as officers secure the scene. His hands tremble not from fear, not from guilt, not from the violence that erupted in the bar, but from memory. The necklace rests in his palm, the pendant still warm from where it lay against his chest during the chaos. He stares at it with eyes that have seen too much, lost too much, carried too much. 12 years of silence. 12 years of living as a ghost. 12 years of replaying a night he wishes he could rewrite. Sometimes, a man hides from the world, not because he is dangerous, but because the truth he carries is too heavy for others to understand. Sometimes silence isn't a shield, it's a burden. And sometimes, the hardest thing a person can do is tell the world who they used to be, when all they want is to become someone new. What do you think? Was Jae-Sung right to keep his past a secret? To bury the sins and the sorrow so no one else would carry them? Or did he wait too long to reveal the truth that might have saved a life, a town, and maybe even himself? If this story hit you like it hit us, if it made you feel, question, or reflect, tap like, subscribe, and stay with us. We have more gripping stories on the way, stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark.